Well, Donald Trump has issued a flurry of executive orders and directives, as Chris Casquejo is also reporting, as he sought to put his stamp on his new administration on matters ranging from energy to criminal pardons and immigration. Trump has pardoned about 1,500 people who stormed the U.S. Capitol back in 2021 on the 6th of January in a sweeping gesture of support to the people who assaulted police as they tried to prevent lawmakers from certifying his 2020 election defeat. Trump signed orders declaring illegal immigration at the U.S.-Mexico border a national emergency, designating criminal cartels as terrorist organizations, and also targeting automatic citizenship for U.S.-born children of immigrants in the country illegally. Basically, at his rally at that sports arena, Trump revoked 78 executive actions of the previous administration. Here are the finer details for you.
The golden age of America begins right now. For American citizens, January 20th, 2025 is Liberation Day.
History made as Donald Trump took the oath of office, officially becoming the 47th President of the United States. With Chief Justice John Roberts administering the oath, Trump placed his hand on the same Bible used by Abraham Lincoln during his swearing-in back in 1861, a striking symbol of both tradition and transformation as the United States turns a new page. Trump's pick for Vice President J.D. Vance was also sworn in, securing his position as the president's right-hand man. And just like he promised, Trump signed a flurry of executive orders right after being sworn in that includes withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement.
In just a few moments, I'm not only signing the release of the J6 hostages, I'm signing other things that you're going to love. Oh, you're going to be happy reading newspapers tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day.
Trump also got his first cabinet member as Marco Rubio was confirmed as the U.S. Secretary of State. In a break from tradition, Trump extended invitations to several world leaders. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, Argentinian President Javier Milei, Chinese Vice President Hang Zheng were in attendance. Front and center was External Affairs Minister S. J. Shankar, representing India. Former living presidents and first ladies were present at the Capitol Rotunda to witness Trump's return to power. Former First Lady Michelle Obama's absence did not go unnoticed. Her office had announced just last week that she would not be attending the inauguration without offering any explanation. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who had been a fierce critic of Trump throughout his first term, was also absent. The ceremony saw the world's wealthiest individuals sitting together. Tech titans Elon Musk, Sundar Pichai, Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg sat side by side, marking a significant moment as they witnessed Trump's dramatic return to the presidency. The inauguration featured stirring musical performances with Christopher Marquio singing "Oh America," Carrie Underwood performing "America the Beautiful," and Lee Greenwood singing "God Bless the USA." Both Trump and Vance were honored following their inauguration with an indoor inaugural parade at Washington's Capital One Arena. The parade, which normally takes place through the streets of Washington from the U.S. Capitol to the White House, was moved inside due to frigid temperatures. As the United States embarks on a new chapter under Trump's leadership, the eyes of the world are fixed on America. With promises of liberation and change, the question now remains, how will this new era reshape the course of history? Bureau Report, NDTV World.
And for further clarity, we have with us live from Rochester, Cay Johnston. Also with us, immigration expert and CEO of Open Avenues, Danielle Goldman. Thank you so much for making time for us on NDTV. Danielle, I'd like to come to you first. The cancellation of the appointments through this CBP One app immediately after Trump's inauguration, it's actually left thousands of migrants in limbo. What does this sudden policy shift say about the administration's approach to asylum seekers as well as their rights?
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me today. I will say that the new administration's approach aims to send a clear, hardline message right out of the gate. And limiting humanitarian pathways is the immigration priority of the Trump administration at this time. It was made abundantly clear today, and it is leaving hundreds of thousands of individuals without a clear path forward and a lot of unknowns, which is something that people are going to have to start to get very comfortable with in this new world. Unfortunately, we are hoping for a humane treatment of the migrants at the southern border as these actions are taken. But all of this, again, remains unknown and uncertain.
Indeed. In fact, that's a sentiment many are echoing within the United States at the moment as well. David, despite his hardline rhetoric on China, though, during his first term, Trump has actually chosen not to impose new tariffs, at least on his first day. Does this signal a shift in his approach to China, and what does this mean for US-China relations moving forward?
Well, I think Donald is going to use tariffs, which are effectively a sales tax on Americans and which allow domestic manufacturers to raise their prices to just below the price of the tariffed good, to negotiate with the Chinese. He's going to try and get what he thinks will be better trade deals with China. Similarly, the 25% tariffs he's proposed on America's two biggest trading partners, Mexico and Canada, also wouldn't take effect immediately, but any tariffs will raise prices while he's promised he's going to lower prices.
Meanwhile, he's also withdrawn the US from the Paris Agreement for a second time, David. Reports also suggest the US is withdrawing from the World Health Organization. How does this actually place the US as far as the global conversation on both health and climate is concerned? What does it mean for international cooperation as far as these aspects are concerned?
Well, it's interesting that Donald Trump has put himself in the same position on the Paris Climate Accords as Tehran. I don't know who would have ever thought something like that would happen. Donald believes these things are hoaxes, that there is no climate disruption despite all the evidence. The sympathy he may have, he made very clear today when he talked about the billionaires who've lost their homes in the terrible fires in Los Angeles, not the ordinary people who lost their homes, but the billionaires. And I think that's indicative of what you're going to see going forward, that this is going to be a government of, by, and for American oligarchs. And it's going to be based on fictions. I mean, I call this the Trump imaginary universe because many of the statements he made today in his inaugural address have no relationship whatsoever to reality. Donald just makes this stuff up in his head, as I've been documenting now for close to 40 years.
Well, it's a Trump imaginary universe, David, that's got him back into the White House. Many would argue that it's his charisma, and his critics would argue just the opposite. But Danielle, one of the new proposals includes ending automatic citizenship for those born in the United States. What legal and constitutional challenges do you foresee arising from such a drastic move? And how would it actually reshape the current understanding of US citizenship?
There is no doubt that there will be challenges here. The 14th Amendment clearly states that anyone born in the United States is a citizen. This is written in the Constitution. He can try and do this, but the reality is just because a president says that this is the case, it doesn't mean that that is what is going to happen, and the courts are going to challenge this. So this is going to be a long, drawn-out battle, as will many of these orders be as we see these initial executive orders play out and through the next 4 years.
Also, Danielle, the courts will ultimately determine the success or failure of this agenda, right?
They will. They absolutely will. It will be challenged, and we will see this ultimately land in court, and this will play out over time.
Right. David, meanwhile, many warn that Trump's second term could send shockwaves through global democratic norms. How do you think his approach to governance, both at home and abroad, will influence authoritarian regimes as well as democratic movements across the world?
I think this is the biggest concern we should have about the Trump administration. Donald had talked when he was previously president about suspending the Constitution. He has asserted that the second article of the U.S. Constitution gives him the power to do, quote, anything I want. It certainly does not do that, but Donald believes that. So he is going to be a friend not of democratic societies and liberty, but a friend to people like Xi, Kim, especially Putin and MBS in Saudi Arabia. Donald, like millions of Republicans in America, and I take this from Mitt Romney, who was the Republican Party presidential candidate 12 years ago, doesn't really believe in democracy. He believes that he is special and that no one else is qualified to be president. And I frankly will expect that if he's reasonably healthy, that 4 years from now, he will try to stay in office. He has said the worst thing he did was to voluntarily leave office 4 years ago.
Well, David Cay Johnston and Danielle Goldman, thank you so much for joining us on NDTV with your views. Let's wait and see how this Trump 2.0 term plays out. We will, of course, revert to you for regular updates from the United States.